another story about attempting to shame women for their choices. And it's really disappointing to see that the Washington Post, an outlet that many people would think is very reputable, has sunk to this new low with an article it posted this week about Susanna Gibson, who's running for a seat in the Virginia House of Delegates. Essentially, the news outlet republished Republican Oppo research on Gibson, including that she has at some point live streamed with her husband consensual sex acts online. Think that I'm joking about it being Republican Oppo research? They literally admitted it in the article. HuffPost wrote about it, and they said that the Washington Post reported that it had received a tip about the consensual videos from a Republican operative whose identity the paper agreed to protect. Of course, the operative said he was not working on behalf of Gibson's Republican opponent in the race, David Owen. Now, it doesn't matter that he's not technically working for David Owen. He's a Republican operative. He's working for the party. And it wasn't just that he saw that this happened and he felt, so compelled to share this information with a journalist. He's doing it to attack Gibson and to help her opponent. So he might say, I'm not being paid by the campaign, but he is a Republican operative. I would assume he's probably being paid by the party. And this is an attack on Gibson politically. So for the Washington Post to just republish this garbage is so disgusting. But let's talk about why they are scared of her as a candidate, because her race is actually in contention. It's actually a toss-up. And she's a candidate who, unlike most Republicans, actually stands for something. She's a nurse practitioner and public health advocate. Gibson is running to represent the state's 57th district, an area northwest of Richmond. Her race is one of just a handful of toss-ups, the results of which will help determine which party controls the Virginia House of Delegates, currently led by Republicans. Her campaign website outlines policy stances in favor of reproductive rights, gun control, public school education, and several other issues. Now, members of her camp, members of her campaign are arguing that providing this information was actually illegal. So let's get into what they're arguing. An attorney for Gibson, Daniel P. Watkins, suggested the publicity amounted to a violation of Virginia law that makes it illegal to record someone nude or in a state of undress and distribute the recording to third parties without their knowledge, a practice also known as revenge porn. Like several other states, Virginia passed a law against revenge porn around a decade ago. It's illegal and it's disgusting to disseminate this kind of material, and we're working closely with FBI and local prosecutors to bring the wrongdoers to justice, Watkins said in a statement. Now, there has been some disagreement by legal experts as to whether or not this does amount to revenge porn under the statute. The statute might be too narrow, that it potentially might not, but either way, it was a disgusting attack on this woman's character. And people called it out. Let's skip ahead to graphic 6, because I'm sure that the Washington Post wasn't ready for the backlash that they received. Lindsey Boylan tweeted this out in response to it. Some people hate women, and some of those people are women, referencing the fact that the person who wrote the article was herself a woman. I think this next comment, though, really summed up this story. Brad Chester wrote, "Congrats on laundering Republican Oppo for them. If they want to make it a story, make them announce it and stand behind it. Getting used isn't journalism." And lastly, I want to talk about one other aspect of the story that I thought was absolutely ridiculous. Maybe the most bizarre aspect of the story. Let's pull up graphic 8. Gibson, 40, can be seen in the videos soliciting tips for performing specific acts, an apparent violation of Chatterbait's terms and conditions, which say requesting or demanding specific acts for tips may result in a ban from the platform for all parties involved. Now, I don't understand the purpose of trying to insinuate she violated the site's terms of service. She didn't do anything illegal, but in fact, it turns out she didn't even violate the site's terms of service, because Ryan Grimm of The Intercept found out that that is a term of service specifically for the viewers and not for the streamers. We don't need to go into many more details about that, but Sharon, I feel like we should be so past shaming women for involvement in sex work, for embracing their sexuality and however they want to do it, especially when we live in a society where most people are living paycheck to paycheck. And I mean, the insinuation was that she was raising this money to fund her campaign. There's no evidence of that, and even if she was, wouldn't be illegal.
Yeah, the Washington Post this is gutter politics, and they are willing participants in it. You have two consenting adults who happen to be married, doing what they wish to do. And by the way, the Washington Post does not work for the site. I don't know why we're getting into terms of service and who violated what. It's ridiculous. Even though they tried to put in part a woman up to doing it, they saw a sex scandal, which what is scandalous? I could take a nap during some of these salacious details because is what it is. Sexuality, freedom, a woman's right. And what about the man? They're not shaming anything about the husband because it's always going to be on us. And I like the fact that she said she's not going to be silenced. She works in healthcare and she's going to pursue what she believes is right. And I think that the Washington Post should apologize for this and make sure it's as long as the original article.
And you bring up a great point there because the article was obscenely, absurdly long for how little information was being conveyed in it. I mean, it was like they had a word count and they had to get it up there. And I'll just also say, I mean, this reporter really was not doing her job because she kept writing things like, it says on her website that she's been in healthcare for 15 years. You are the journalist. You do the verifying on that. You don't say as a journalist, it says on her website, you can verify that claim. I mean, the whole thing was just a complete and utter, I can't say the word that I wanted to say. Something show. It was a crap show, is what it was. And I think you're right. They absolutely need to apologize.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.